The Clever Mouse and the Giant's Shoes. Once upon a time, in a quiet little village tucked between the rolling hills and deep forests, there lived a very clever mouse named Maximum. Max was not like the other mice. While the others scurried about looking for crumbs and hiding from cats, Max spent his days coming up with plans and solving problems for the animals of the village. Whenever anyone had a tricky situation, they'd always say, "Ask Max. He'll figure it out." But Max had one big dream. He wanted to explore the world beyond the village, to see the towering mountains in the distance and the sparkling rivers that ran through them. However, there was one problem. The woods outside the village were home to a giant. A grumpy, loud, and very clumsy giant named Gordo, whose feet were so big they could squash a small house with a single step. Max had heard many stories about Gordo. The villagers said he was always stomping through the forest, scaring away anyone who dared to venture too far. But Max, being a clever mouse, knew that if he could somehow befriend Gordo, he might be able to explore the great outdoors without any danger. One sunny afternoon, as Max was strolling by the village pond, he overheard a loud thud followed by a groan. He crept closer and peeked through the tall grass. There, sitting on a giant log, was Gordo the giant, holding his enormous foot. Gordo had a problem. His shoes were too small. His big toes stuck out of the front and the sides were bursting at the seams. Max thought for a moment, then decided to approach. "Excuse me, Mr. Giant," Max squeaked, his tiny voice almost lost in the wind. "You seem to have some trouble with your shoes. May I help?" Gordo looked down, surprised to see such a tiny creature offering assistance. "My shoes don't fit anymore," Gordo rumbled. "And I don't know how to fix them. I'm too big to go to the shoemaker, and no one will help me because they're afraid of me." Max smiled. "Well, you're in luck. I happen to know a lot about fixing problems. If you trust me, I think I can help." Gordo raised an eyebrow, but he was desperate. "All right, little mouse. What's your plan?" Max scurried up onto the log and took a closer look at the shoes. They were indeed far too small for the giant's enormous feet, but that gave Max an idea. "I'll need some strong thread, a big needle, and some extra fabric. Oh, and I think we'll need to visit Mrs. Squirrel. She's the best tailor in the forest." Gordo agreed, and carefully scooping Max into his hand, they set off through the forest. The trees swayed gently as Gordo's giant feet thudded against the ground. Soon they reached Mrs. Squirrel's treehouse. Mrs. Squirrel was a master tailor, and when Max explained the situation, she quickly got to work. With her swift paws and Max's clever ideas, they stitched together a brand new pair of shoes using thick leaves, sturdy bark, and vines. They even added soft moss on the inside to make them comfortable. When the shoes were finished, Gordo slipped them on and stood up. He took one careful step, then another, and to his delight, the shoes fit perfectly. "These are wonderful," Gordo exclaimed, his voice echoing through the forest. "Thank you, little mouse." "Thank you, Mrs. Squirrel." From that day on, Gordo wasn't a grumpy giant anymore. He walked through the forest with a lighter step, and because of his new shoes, he didn't stomp and scare the villagers anymore. And as for Max, Gordo became his friend, and together they explored the great mountains and sparkling rivers beyond the village, having adventures that Max had always dreamed of. And so, the clever little mouse and the once grumpy giant shared many more journeys together, proving that even the biggest problems can be solved with a little kindness, some clever thinking, and a bit of teamwork. The end. For more interesting bedtime stories, please like and subscribe to our channel.